Luka Doncic. What I remember about Luka
Mm.
before the NBA was hearing his name, obviously, and his versatility, and him averaging 13 points a game in Europe. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot if you're not familiar with the European game and how team-oriented it is and how difficult it is to score over there. But that's a lot
Yeah.
of points for EuroLeague.
Yeah. No, Luka was. It was the first time I started scouting a player before they went to the league.
Mhm.
And it wasn't even in large part, it wasn't because I was like, I'm gonna start looking at this guy before he makes it. To be very honest, a lot of it was I'm gonna look at this player because Goran Dragic plays for his national team, and I'm watching Goran Dragic play.
Mhm.
And enter this 16-year-old, 6'8" kid who has like real playmaking chops, who has a big body, not necessarily the best athletes in the way I guess people in general think of athleticism, springy and super quick, but an athlete in other ways, deceleration, body control, like things that aren't typically what you scratch off as athletic, but players have made whole careers off of decelerating and body control. Like James Harden was one of the best scorers we've ever seen. Like that was his niche for freaking his whole, basically he still does it to this day. So,
Yeah.
and watching these kinds of players. So I'm there watching him. And then I'm like, you know what? let me see who this kid is. It turns out he was signed to Real Madrid in 2012. He signed a 5-year deal at 13 years old.
Man.
Played his first game at 15 years old in what is called the Spanish League, Liga ACB, and the Euro League. That is the second best basketball league in the world.
Real Madrid is legendary.
Yeah. Real Madrid is probably the best team outside of the 30 NBA teams. They're probably better than some NBA teams, if we're being real honest. Like, it is what it is. And here we have this like 15-year-old kid in 2014 showing up and playing there. Didn't really play much, but then the next year starts coming off the bench and starts getting some more leeway. And then 2016, 2017 happens, Kenny. And for those of you who don't know what 2016, 2017 was, it was essentially Luka's first chance at starting. And he started cooking. Like, there was no other way to put it. He would just play. He barely played 20 minutes a game, and he was already putting up 16 points per game.
In Europe. That's like
Europe.
30 in the US.
Yeah, this is in Europe against 28-year-old players who some of them are a lot of them are even better than players in the NBA, to be very honest. They just
and a lot of former NBA players also.
A lot of former NBA players who sometimes choose to live there because the lifestyle is different and yada yada. And you never really know, but some of these players are definitely talented. Like it, and he's going over there and he's just picking apart these defenses, doing everything needed. And then comes the tournament. And for those of you who don't know the tournament that I'm talking about, it is the tournament that Slovenia won, where Goran Dragic won tournament MVP and Luka was named to the all-tournament team. He was the second best player for Slovenia. And it, maybe it sounded homer, but I knew he was special. And it just felt crazy watching Goran Dragic, who at the time had, was on the Miami Heat, obviously, but literally came out and publicly said, this is the best basketball player I have ever shared the basketball court with. Mm-hmm. The guy was 17 years old, Kenny.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, at this age, Goran said, ever. He was playing with Dwayne Wade. He had played with Chris Bosh. Mm-hmm. He had played in Phoenix with Steve Nash, Isaiah Thomas when IT was IT, Eric Bledsoe when Eric Bledsoe was Eric Bledsoe. Like, Goran had elite level teammates. And he's coming out saying, no, this kid is special. Like, he's a superstar. He's going to be the best player in the league. And the reporters are laughing at him at this point. I swear to God, you can go back, you can watch, not laughing, but like,
I remember that. Sort of.
Like, oh, he's not really that serious. So then the next season, he goes he ends up winning EuroLeague MVP. Absolutely tears the fucking life away from everybody at 17 years old and not even in prime condition, like not even prime shape. Wins EuroLeague MVP, gets named to the all-decade team from 2010 to 2020. Keep in mind, he really started playing in 2016. Just off of 3 years, they were like, "No, this." Keep in mind, when that decade started, he was 12 years old.
Man,
He wasn't even 12 years. He was 11 years old when that decade started. In 2010, I mean, he was born 99, so he was 10 years and some change. Think about that. He was 10 years old. He was named to an all-decade team where people are 30, 35. He was that level of good. And it was one of the few times where I actually saw a basketball player play, and it was like, I don't give a fuck about the athleticism.
right.
Like, there's generally no way in hell this guy flunks. He fails out of the league. And it was one of the hardest stand my ground moments I ever had on a prospect, because there was a lot of time there where DeAndre Ayton was getting a lot of noise, which anyways,
He's been hooping lately. To give him credit.
he's been sensational, but I just didn't. And this is no shade to DeAndre Ayton. It's more, honestly, it's 100% shade to the Phoenix Suns organization for going about it the way they did, because that's another, and also the Kings organization.
Yeah.
I think they just say you didn't want to draft the guy because you didn't grade him that high. But don't say like, oh, we don't know if he can play next to another elite ball handler. Like, bullshit. When he went to Madrid, he wasn't the best ball handler. They had Sergio Llull. For those of you who don't know who Sergio Llull is, he was the best player in Europe when Luka got there.
Yeah.
Like, he had played next to an elite ball handler. So I was like, you guys are just trying to throw shit, hoping that it sticks, but it's not really working. And at the time, obviously, they had Devin Booker. They didn't want to stunt his growth and yada, yada. So it was just a lot of that. But watching Luka play overseas, it was tough, first of all, because all the games were overseas. But watching the games on like reruns and just Kenny, I was never more sure that a player was going to make it work in the NBA. Granted, I did not think he was going to be this level of elite that he is to this day right now. But the rookie year didn't surprise me. What he's done hasn't surprised me. Now it's crazy that it's normal what he's been doing. Damn near a 35-point triple-double in the league. But overseas, you know, the things he was doing in like the tournament runs and what they were able to accomplish. Every time he plays for Slovenia, it's like he shows out. Like it means something for those players to play at their actual, for their actual country. And during that tournament run, to backtrack just a little bit, it wasn't, I want to like make a point, like he wasn't playing against scrub countries or scrub players. He was playing against Giannis. He beat Giannis. Yeah. They were playing against Kristaps. He beat Kristaps. And Kristaps, after he beat Kristaps, was like, that 17-year-old kid is better than that kid is special. Like, everybody was like, no, this kid is different. Like, he's processing the game like he's a 35-year-old veteran. And he hadn't even played at that point like 100 FIBA games, like, or 100 combined EuroLeague games. Like, it was like he was still practically very new. You can tell like he wasn't in the best physique, but the whole thing was, oh, can he do it in the next level? Can he do it against elite defenders? But my whole thing was, everywhere he's played, they've thrown him the best defender, and he was still doing that same thing. So for me, it was a no-brainer. The Luka overseas, just my favorite pre-NBA run like that I get to watch from a player.
Yeah, so for me, I honestly wasn't really that familiar with Luka until the year leading up to him getting drafted. But my baseline was, I remember when I was in high school, that was when that legendary, iconic Brandon Jennings mixtape dropped.
Oh, God.
So I'm in high school. I'm 2 years younger than Brandon Jennings. I'm the biggest Brandon Jennings fan in the world off that mixtape alone. But I say that because he went over to Europe and he averaged 7 points. And I'm like, how does this happen? And he's still this top prospect in the draft. But that was when I learned they just don't play in a way in Europe where you're going to average 25 and 30.
No, doesn't exist.
So, and then Brandon Jennings goes over to the NBA. A few games in, he gets 55. I'm like, okay, it makes sense. So that's always been my baseline. So when I seen Luka at that young of an age averaging 13 because Brandon Jennings, before all the injuries, was a freak athlete.
Yeah.
So Luka didn't have any of that. He just had pure skill. And even still, the versatility, like I mentioned, versatility is my favorite thing in NBA players. So I was like, even if the scoring doesn't translate in the league, because I was still not sure how he worked being that slow and that whatever. I was like, even if that doesn't translate in the league, he still has his playmaking and rebound to fall back on. He'll help some teams win. You want to talk about the scoring working in the NBA. Like he said, it was a lot easier to score in the NBA. And a lot of people were taken aback by that, but I had known that from watching Brandon Jennings' experience. And
yeah, people
seeing
get
him
shocked
now,
when
but
people get shocked when NBA players from overseas say it's easier to score here. There's more space.
Yeah, it's way more space, and it's Europe is so structured. Like it's like college basketball times 1,000 as far as the structure goes. That's why you're not going to average the 25s and the 30s over there. And FIBA is a little different because he put up crazy numbers in FIBA.
Ridiculous numbers in FIBA, especially recently. But
EuroLeague, you're just not going to do that. But man, like you said, 35 point triple-double this season pretty much, averaging.
Crazy. And to think that, to me, the reason to be honest, the reason I vouched for him so hard was because people were trying to downgrade what he was doing. Just because, I don't know what the whole stigma is with.
No, I'll tell you exactly what it is. It's xenophobia. Like even, and I saw conversations about this a few weeks ago about how European players are soft and this and that. It's like, no, they're not. Like the guy's name is slipping my mind right now. But he played for the Warriors in the 90s on the Run TMC teams. He actually invented the Euro step. That's why it's a Euro step. It wasn't Manu Ginobili, it was him. I wish I could remember his name. But he was tough. He was super tough. You look at Goran Dragic, just losing teeth, getting back up, still playing, all the injuries he went through. There's a stigma around European players that I don't necessarily like. And even Dirk wasn't necessarily soft, quote unquote. He just was a great shooter, so he shot.
Was so skilled that he didn't need to bang down low.
Yeah,
but
he didn't need to But yeah, go ahead.
It was just that's the reason I vouch for him so hard, because I was like watching this guy play, and then I'm doing this. I'm scouting this draft class, and in turn I'm watching the Marvin Bagleys and the DeAndre Aytons play, and I'm like, there's no way you seriously believe that getting Devin Booker, somebody who can make his life easier, isn't going to work for him.
Right.
And at that time, the Kings had just drafted also De'Aaron Fox. He had a very good year. But, at that time, it was like, oh, so you mean to tell me you can't get De'Aaron Fox, somebody else who can make his life easier? And who's to know at that time, like, what if De'Aaron Fox doesn't work out? Because it was his first year. Booker had 2 more years, and he was playing really good. And then, ironically, they go out and they get Chris Paul to play alongside Devin Booker. And then for 3 straight years, the Kings draft another guard to pair with De'Aaron Fox. They went with, starting off with, he's skipping my name now, Tyrese. Then they went Davion Mitchell. Then this year they drafted Kobe Jones. Like, it's like, if you would have just got it right the first time, just to think of all the could have beens, like one of the best rivalries in basketball is Booker versus Doncic. They could have been on the same team.
Yep.
They could have been on. It's just crazy. And it was just a big what if for me. I just didn't like the fact that, if you just say like you like DeAndre Ayton because he's a center, but don't say, oh yeah, I don't see Luka playing alongside another scorer. Like we don't know what he can do alongside another scorer. Because since he's been in the NBA, when its best worked was when Jalen Brunson was at his peak, being another primary, another ball handler. And now Kyrie. And now with Kyrie. So it just felt like a bullshit excuse. And I'm not up for bullshit. So I was like, yeah, these 2 franchises I'm not going to enjoy.
Yeah, it's the xenophobia of it and just pure laziness, because
yes,
anybody who played in Europe, like we mentioned that style of play, they can play next to a ball handler. Luka doesn't have to shoot 40 times a game.
He wasn't in Europe, and they were winning everything, honestly.
And so it's just like I don't understand that, but look at him now.
Crazy.
It's that simple. Just look at him now.
I know Dallas is happy as fuck that they traded from 5 to 3 and drafted damn near generational offensive player.
Yeah, and Trey's a very good player. I'm not going to knock Trey. I'm not going to say who won or lost the draft, but man,
Atlanta would rather have Luka too. We'll end it with that, I guess.
He gave him 70 this season.